I move that Committee Report 385 and Resolution 12-318 be adopted.
For the second?
Second motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. For the explanation, Councilmember Berg.
Recognizing the cultural, historic, and scientific value of the karst freshwater aquifer ecosystem of the Ewa Plains, West Oahu.
Okay, do you have a further motion?
I do, Chair, please. I move to further amend Resolution 12-318 to an FD1.
Okay, do we have a second to the FD1? Okay, seeing no second to the proposed motion to amend to the FD1, that motion has failed. Any further motions? Councilmember Garcia.
Mr. Chairman, I move to defer Resolution 12-318 at the discretion of the Chair.
Second motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, before we actually vote on this, I need to declare Council Communication 360 has been filed with the clerk. Out of the abundance of caution, I'm filing this disclosure as the Executive Director of the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce. I'm not quite sure what the impacts are going to be on the members, but I do this anyway. Mr. Chairman, are we in discussion?
No, we're going to take testimony first.
Okay.
Okay, anyone seeking to offer testimony on Resolution 12-318? This is your time, sir. Please state your name for the record. Offer your testimony.
My name is Lancelot Haile Lincoln. I support this bill. Please pass this one. You know, we have to protect Hawaiian culture. We have to protect our sacred sites, all of them. This place is a very sacred place. My ancestors buried there in these caves. Please protect. I respect you, all of you. Respect yourselves and all of us also, please. That's all I ask.
Thank you.
This is identified as a burial aho, simply because when the archaeologists did a subsurface excavation, took all these stones from the aho, set it on the side, he found a full set of human remains just below that first layer of stone. So when he discovered that they were at Ivikupuna, what he did was that he just put back one layer of stones. So it's identified as a burial aho. Our mana'o behind that is that more likely than not that this person was probably a very respected person to be buried inside a structure that was used for prayers. This last structure is identified in the archaeological survey as a religious structure. There's several aspects of this structure that is considered religious in nature. One is this large stone at the entrance of this first hole. Originally that stone would have been standing up. So it's identified as a ki'ai or ki'i, as a guardian over the entrance to that hole. The second feature that makes it religious, there's a religious structure. You can see the upright stone just beneath the keawe tree. Directly in front, laying down, is the ki'ai or the ki'i that would have been standing up originally. That would have served as a guardian over that elevated platform. Right in the middle where you see the cone standing, in the survey that's identified as an elevated platform or a place where whoever was facilitating prayer would have stood.
The main point of the resolution really, and why we did an FD1 and took a ton of stuff out of it, was because it's just really just saying, recognizing the cultural, historic, and scientific value of the karst of the Ewa Plains, West Oahu. But this obviously is a big hot button for developers and well drillers and people like that, because they really came out against it.
It's an underground water system that has humongous ramifications on development. Public Land Development Corporation, Section 106, development on the Ewa Plains, Second City, rail, you name it. Everything's in play. I would really urge us not to move this along. If your intent, however, is, as you stated, to pass this out, I will definitely vote no. Thank you.
Came out against it, and they're against the use of the word karst, which we talked to hydrologists, geologists, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the DLNR aquatics group. They all said this is karst. There's shrimp living out there. You can dig a hole in the ground, and shrimp will appear just by themselves 500 yards inland from the shoreline. So it's quite an active area, and all the things we said in the original one we really think are true and accurate. But in order to just not rattle anyone's cage, we just took all this stuff out and said, just let's make it real simple. We just want to have it, cultural, historic, scientific value of the karst should be studied. It's a big deal in the mainland. It creates a lot of tourism and interest. There's a Hawaiian cultural side to this that's important. And there's a natural ecosystem side of it. So therefore, the FD1 is really, really, really a harmless, bland thing, and it's hard to believe people would be against voting for it. So thank you very much.
When you pass fresh water over coral, limestone, it dissolves the coral. So it creates a whole series of caves and karsts. It carries nutrients in the same manner. As the water is traveling from the higher elevation to the lower elevation, it's carrying all those nutrients. And when the water hits the flatland, it deposits all that soil. Water is traveling in the same manner as a traditional river, however, you cannot see it. Right where we're standing on the banks of a river that cannot be seen. The soil marks the bank of the river. The center of the river is marked by no soil and a presence of rock. We're at the site of a structure that's identified in the archaeological survey as a water sinkhole. We've actually had, if you can imagine, we actually walked inside of a river to get to this structure. The water that was in this sinkhole was used to drink and to take a bath in. So the water was clean, which also means that the water had to be moving. They would not have taken a bath or drank standing water. This is actually the location of the center of the river. If you just think about what a traditional river looks like, the cleanest water is in the center where the water is moving fast. There's no soil. The rushing water removes all the soil and debris. All you have is boulders at the bottom of the river. This trail is built in a Tahitian manner and supported by all the upright stones. This trail was first identified by Lieutenant Malden, who was a map maker on board George Vancouver's ship back in the 1790s, when Vancouver and Malden were charting the shorelines of the island of Oahu and also the other islands. It was at that time he named the Hawaiian Islands the Sandwich Islands. He identifies this trail. This trail originates at a place called Kualaka'i along the shoreline. And this trail actually goes 4 miles, and it connects this region with Kalo'i Gulch and also Honouliuli Gulch.
State your name for the record.
My name is Perry White. I did submit written testimony on this, and I'm just going to say a few short things from
Go
that.
ahead, sir.
In early 1970, I was a teacher at the University of Hawaii Laboratory School when I watched a TV program that featured Dean McHarg. He's the author of Design with Nature, a seminal book on environmental planning, and what he had to say made such eminently good sense. I was just an instant convert to it. I went off to University of Pennsylvania, was able to get a master's degree in regional planning, and returned to Hawaii in 1973. Been working as an environmental planner ever since then. What most attracted me to McHarg's approach was the idea that paying careful attention to what science has to tell you about the natural environment can lead to better decision making and wiser resource management. It's just so clear that that's what you ought to do that. What I find upsetting about this resolution is that it contains so many scientific inaccuracies that it doesn't form the kind of sound basis that we all want. And I feel personally that if you were to adopt this resolution in its present form, it would do far more harm than it would good. So, and I think it would make it much more complicated for the agencies that are charged with protecting this resource to do a good job. Personally, I think that the existing provisions of regulations are adequate to do the job, but let's say I'm wrong, and I am wrong from time to time. I just don't think that as presently written, this resolution will improve the ability to protect those parts of the resource that are valuable. This is not an emergency. The council has time to look at the provisions that it's got in this resolution, to think about what it's trying to accomplish, and to revise it to make it do what it is intended to do. I hope it will take that time and not adopt the resolution as presently written. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony. Councilmember Berg has a question for you.
Mr. White? Yes. I just want to let you know, as the chair of Parks, when we deliberated on this, I read your testimony in great detail and amended it. So it went through a revision to follow all your terminology. Then, with that, we did another floor draft, and on that floor draft, we have the Board of Water Supply that found further terminology issues. So I further amended this, and there's a hand-carried FD1 that we're no longer deliberating. I didn't get a second, but I'd just like you to know that everything that you've brought forward, and thank you for your testimony at length at the committee, was adhered to, adopted, and incorporated. And so my question to you would be, this resolution does not protect anything. It doesn't preserve anything. It just says they're out there, a karst system, and by being out there, a karst system, how about telling the city administration, state of Hawaii, and the United States government are urged to recognize and further study. So basically, you're saying that you object to further study the cultural, historic, and scientific opportunities because, again, in your testimony, this doesn't protect, this doesn't spend money, it doesn't preserve anything, it has no value. It just says, after all the corrections were made, taking heed of the Board of Water Supply and you, so the question is, clarification, you're against further studying of the karst system on the other plane?
I am against adopting a resolution that in the form that I saw it, and I saw the FD1 version, I think. Now, if there's a subsequent one, then perhaps I haven't seen it. But that contains so many things that I believe are not scientifically accurate that if I, as a planner, and I do look to guidance from regulations, from resolutions, from all sorts of things when I'm trying to do my job. So if I go back to something and it contains things that aren't accurate in it and I'm trying to resolve all of this, it makes it very difficult for me as a planner to do the kind of job that I want to do. So what I'm saying is I don't believe that this is presently written accurately represents what is out on the EVA plane. And we could go into long details in this. And I've been involved out there for a long time, including with working with Dr. Ziegler, who helped on realigning the coal conveyor, for example, AES project that I was involved in. So I pay attention to that kind of stuff. I'm pretty aware of the whole Ankyline situation out there because I've done work on that, both on the Big Island and on this island. I've worked on establishing preserves. So I'm not a developer's pocket boy on that. I really do want to do the right kind of job. And I don't think this is where it needs to be. And I think that more thought ought to go into the way that it's written if you want it to do the job it's set out for.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions for the testifier? Councilmember Kobayashi.
Thank you. Well, do you feel it's important to have a resolution that's accurate?
I absolutely feel it's important to have a
Not that it's accurate, but do you think it's important to have a resolution that'll accomplish?
I don't know.
As long as it contains the accurate information.
I think it's important that if you're going to undertake something, that it be based on a correct understanding of the situation. it's only if you have that kind of understanding that you can adopt a wise regulation or make any wise decisions, I think. So, yeah, I think we should take time. I think not we, but you should take time to get it right. If this were an emergency situation, I might sort of side on the version, that's not exactly right, but let's go ahead. I don't see the emergency here. I think it's important to get it right. I think if you get it right, you'll serve the public better.
For the Eva Plains?
For the Eva Plain.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the
I have a
testifier?
quick follow-up, very quick follow-up.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Berg.
What I did is I struck out, there's about 4 whereas clauses that have been removed. If I can, clerk, you did, very, very quickly, just name one inaccuracy in here. Can you point it out for me? What whereas clause do you object to that is inaccurate?
Let's see. Well, I don't know what's in the, okay. Let's see, you've got a whereas the Eva Plains Karst is a hydrologically connected waterway and natural aquifer filtering system that transfers nutrients and et cetera, that one. I listed a number of things about that. Most solution sinkholes and solution channels are not interconnected with one another. In localized areas where they are well connected, they don't provide natural aquifer filtering because when they're connected, the water flows really quickly and the whole filtering aspect doesn't happen. Uncontrolled points of pollution, of course, are always bad, not just when they're karst, and there's nothing particular about the karst that makes that big. The karst is not, so far as I know, particularly important insofar as transferring nutrients and organic carbon to downstream food webs. And finally, there isn't anything in the resolution that improves regulators' ability to do anything about all of that. So again, I don't want to downplay the fact that the karst on the Eva Plain is relatively unique in the Hawaii setting. It is also quite different from the kind of karst settings that are found that have the very large caves in the Midwest. Discussion here was from the fact that it might be a tourist attraction, for example. I think there's testimony or written stuff from the Speleological Society that says the kinds of caves you have here really aren't suitable for that.
If I can interrupt you, Mr. White, very quickly, Chair, I don't believe the testifier, Mr. White, has the version that I'm referencing. Everything that he just pointed out, I don't have that.
I don't think he has time to really read it.
Yeah,
We need to move on. Councilmember
Again,
Berg.
I don't want to go too far on this.
Everything he just said is not in this resolution.
You can save that for discussion, sir.
Not in this
Any
resolution.
further questions for the testifier? No further questions. Anyone else seeking to offer testimony on Resolution 12-318? Thank you, sir. Please state your name for the record and offer your testimony.
My name is Tom Nance. I'm a registered and practicing civil engineer in the state of Hawaii. I've been working on groundwater issues in Eva since the early 1980s. Started to focus on it very intensively early in 1993 when Oahu Sugar announced their closing and an opportunity to see major changes in groundwater occur as a result of stopping pumping on one hand and stopping the importation of sweeter water on the other. Since I've been working out there, just a quick tally, I think there's been about 110 production wells, monitor wells, and exploratory boreholes that have been done over that period of time. More than 70 of those were done at my direction. And for the other 40 or so, I have intimate knowledge of their construction and the conditions that were encountered. I have and continue to monitor groundwater out there with continuous water level recording stations since early '93. And I also monitor salinity profiles and some deep monitor wells we have out there. So I really think that in the last 30 years or so, or actually I know, may I continue?
Yeah, please sum up, please.
Nobody has the kind of data that I have to characterize groundwater out there in Eva. I have had a discussion with Mr. Bond over the phone. You may or may not be aware of that, Councilman Berg. There are still, and I'm, again, like the version that Perry looked at, you may have cleaned it up further. The version I've looked at did clean it up some, but still to characterize groundwater occurrence of movement out there as movement of streams through interconnected karst features. These are solution cavities created by acidic rainfall or acidic runoff pooling and dissolving the limestone. That's just not how the groundwater moves. That's just not how we develop it. And to show you, of the 70 wells that I've personally been in charge of having put in out there, not a single one in the groundwater environment penetrated by those wells encountered a void or solution cavity large enough to be noticed by the driller. I mean, his drill string would drop if, and it has happened elsewhere, out in Kahuku, for example, a huge cavity I've run into at the Tap Pryor Oyster Farm. But I've got 70 holes under my own thing, and they're from the shoreline, near shore area to the inland margin of the Caprock. They're from the far east end near Pearl Harbor out to the expansion of the Barbers Point Deep Draft Harbor. And my objection, I'm not objecting to studying, I'm simply saying get the description of groundwater correct. And the version that I've read so far isn't.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions for the testifier? No questions, thank you. Anyone else seeking to offer testimony on Resolution 12-318? Anyone else? Seeing no one, members, we are in discussion. Members, we are in discussion. Remember, the motion on the floor is to defer. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, in support of my motion to defer, and the compelling testimony of the last two testifiers is enough to give what I would hope yourself, Mr. Chairman, the person who would run the committee with jurisdiction on this matter, and for all stakeholders to come together and try to see to it that if this resolution in some form or fashion can advance, be it a resolution that actually has everyone participating in the discussion and drafting the language that I think will sync up with the intent of what the resolution would have you do out here on the Eva Plain. So the motion to defer does not kill the intent of this, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to have yourself and your new council to take a closer look at this resolution. Perhaps if it is drafted in a way that everybody can reach a consensus with, then perhaps we can move it forward. I don't want to kill it necessarily outright. Give this opportunity give this resolution another opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, members? No further discussion? Members, any objections on deferring Resolution 12-318? Noting objection from Councilmember Berg. Any reservations, members? Noting no reservations, Committee Report 385 and Resolution 12-318 has been deferred.